fear of finding oneself alone, that is what they suffer from, and so they don't find themselves at all. Andre Gide, the Immortalist. Loneliness, autophobia, isolation. But what if being alone wasn't just a fear? What if it was the key to understanding ourselves? Where does this fear come from? Why does the idea of confronting our own psyche, our own personality, fill us with such dread? Perhaps it's because we sense an inherent danger in it. Research by Holt-Lundstad et al. Found that loneliness is as harmful to physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes per day, increasing the risk of premature death by 26%. So maybe we fear being alone because, in a way, it actually can be deadly. And this is true. Loneliness is a significant health concern, affecting 80% of young people and 40% of older adults, and goes beyond mere social inconvenience. It accelerates physiological aging and heightens the risk for serious health issues like cardiovascular disease. Research by John Cacioppo shows that loneliness triggers the brain's fight or flight response, spiking cortisol levels and causing chronic inflammation, which leads to long-term health issues and sometimes early death. Cacioppo's work also reveals loneliness disrupts brain function related to social cognition and empathy, distorting social perceptions and accelerating cognitive decline. Robert Weiss, in his seminal book, Loneliness, The Experience of Emotional and Social Isolation, distinguished between two types of loneliness, social and emotional. Social loneliness arises when someone lacks a social circle or network, while emotional loneliness stems from a lack of intimacy with others. Now, both forms feed into each other, creating a cycle of alienation and despair. Russell's UCLA Loneliness Scale, created in 1984, is one of the most widely used tools to measure loneliness. It reveals that social loneliness is tied to lacking community connections, while emotional loneliness is linked to dissatisfaction in close relationships. Social loneliness can make you feel alienated, while emotional loneliness often brings a deep sadness and sense of loss. As existential psychologist Rollo once said, alienation is felt as a loss of the capacity to be intimately personal. For May, the fear of being alone is at its core a fear of intimacy, not just with others, but with ourselves. It's not simply that we want to be part of a particular group or activity. We crave proof that we're not alone. But what if, instead of constantly evading isolation by filling our lives with distractions and superficial interactions, we actually faced it head on? The fear of being alone is also an invitation to create, to become something deeper and more beautiful. We fear the meaning that lies hidden within ourselves, within our own isolation. As May said, silence is the great crime, for silence is lonely and frightening. May pointed out that loneliness and emptiness are two sides of the same coin. People look to others to give their lives a sense of purpose and to avoid the anxiety of our existential situation. But turning inward and being alone forces you to create that purpose for yourself. This transformation of anxiety into a creative force is part of what May saw as the existential challenge of modern life. Taking this one step further, perhaps our fear of being alone reflects broader societal fears. For May, neurotic symptoms are often symptoms of something unaddressed by the culture at large. Our society places such a high value on being socially accepted that it can make our fear of being alone almost pathological. As May put it, the reverse side of modern man's loneliness is his great fear of being alone. In our culture, it is permissible to say you are lonely, for that is a way of admitting that it is not good to be alone. Even more fundamentally, May suggested that the human being gets his original experiences of being a self out of his relatedness to other persons, and when he is alone without other persons, he is afraid he will lose this experience of being a self. The fear of being alone, then, is also a fear of losing one's identity. People are afraid of losing their solidity, their stable connection to reality, that if they're by themselves long enough, they'll simply float away or have nothing to orient themselves with or to. But this dependence on others for our very existence is exactly the problem. This is the root of our fear of being alone. It's about our very identity, our very existence. Here, Rollo ideas intersect with Carl Jung's concept of the persona, the social identity we take up and present to others. If we're not careful, we can start to believe that the persona is who we really are, neglecting the deeper levels of our being. For Jung, the solution is to come to know these deeper aspects of ourselves, to illuminate the parts of our psyche that are unconscious and make them a part of our conscious identity. Jung said about loneliness that it does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible. If a man knows more than others, he becomes lonely. Despite that, Jung was known for spending exorbitant amounts of time in solitude at his famous Bollingen Tower. Those times were deeply important for him, spending much of it building, creating art, and enjoying nature and the peaceful silence. Erich Fromm, a key thinker in psychoanalysis and existential social philosophy, offered another perspective on loneliness. For Fromm, as for May, loneliness was a major existential issue tied to the human experience. In his influential works, The Art of Loving and Escape from Freedom, Fromm explored how loneliness is linked to our search for meaning and our awareness of isolation. Fromm believed that modern society, with its obsession with individualism and material success, only worsens our sense of loneliness. He argued that the superficial relationships and economic pressures of today's world leave people feeling more isolated and disconnected than ever. According to Fromm, the key to overcoming loneliness isn't just about finding more friends or socializing more. It's about forging genuine, deep connections and finding real meaning in life. True fulfillment comes from loving relationships and being part of something bigger than yourself. For Fromm, loneliness can be tackled by developing authentic bonds, embracing love, and finding a greater purpose in life. In essence, Fromm saw loneliness as a reflection of broader societal failings and a call to seek deeper, more meaningful connections. His perspective challenges us to move beyond surface-level interactions and address the existential void that modern life often amplifies. But perhaps there's a key to striking the balance between the negative effects of loneliness and the virtues of getting to know and be comfortable with oneself. A study by Weinstein et al. In 2023, which tracked 178 adults in the UK and the US for up to 21 days, found that while solitude can reduce stress and enhance feelings of autonomy, it can also lead to loneliness and reduce life satisfaction when it's not chosen voluntarily. The research highlights that when solitude is a personal choice, its negative impacts, like loneliness, are minimized, allowing individuals to reap its calming benefits without the downsides. Professor Netta Weinstein, the lead author, suggests that intentionally choosing solitude can promote well-being, but enforced isolation may lead to dissatisfaction. And this is in line with both May and Fromm's views on the benefits of being able to be with oneself. The key takeaway is that solitude, when used thoughtfully, can be a valuable tool for reducing stress and also enhancing personal freedom and your own consciousness of who you are. From all this, we can see that the fear of being alone, while understandable and even justified in some ways, can be a limiting fear, holding us back from reaching our true potential and enhanced states of well-being. At the same time, we have to recognize that fear is in place in part to protect us from the harmful effects of social isolation, but also because our society places such an emphasis on social value and interaction. But what if, instead of fearing solitude, we embraced it as a chance for personal growth and self-discovery? By understanding and confronting our fear of being alone, we might find that it's not something to dread, but rather an opportunity to create, to reflect, and to become something deeper and more beautiful. If you guys like this video, check out my video on the psychology of evil, where I break down some of the top thinkers in psychology and philosophy's ideas about the nature of evil. From Carl Jung to Hannah Arendt, we dive deep into one of the most fascinating subjects in psychology.